I'm Melanie, and I thought that I would start by answering a most awesome question that I got on Instagram actually, and that was the knee replacement worth it? Now, it's quite a tricky question to actually answer. Now, if you are watching me live, or if you are watching this back, then just hit like, which is the wee thumbs up in the bottom corner, just so that I can see you here. If you've got any questions for me, then do ask away, and if you're not here with me live, I will answer them later. And if you're here with me live, then I'll get them at the end of this broadcast. So this was a question posed to me by somebody who's waiting for a knee replacement, I think, and haven't had it yet, and want to know, was it worth it? Now, when I first got that question, it was 2 or 3 weeks post-op, and I thought, no, it most definitely freaking wasn't. But if you asked me a few weeks later, my answer might be slightly different. And if you were to ask some of my friends who've been with me the whole way through this, they would have given you different answers as we go through too. So what I've tried to do is make this as factual and as with as less emotion as I can, because opinions are just that, they're opinions. What I want to do, hopefully, is arm people who are toying with the should they shouldn't they thing with knee ops, or in the first few weeks of hell post knee op. I'm hoping that this will help those sorts of people, and or family and friends of those sorts of people. So let's start at the beginning. Now, I've got some notes down here, so that's what I'm looking at. Here in New Zealand, what they do to determine whether you should have knee replacement is they go on a threshold scoring. Now, I had to answer this questionnaire 4 or 5 times over the 3 or 4 years that it took me to get from the beginning to the top of the list and have the operation. 4 years, that's how long it took. I know that in some countries with private medical insurance, people can choose as and when they like, and there is really no wait. But those people, although that might be an advantage, you really do need to go into this thing with open eyes if you have got that sort of readiness with your decision to go ahead. So in New Zealand, they go with a pain score, and I've got to answer some questions asking how it affects my life, how it affects my mental well-being, how it affects my daily activities, how it affects looking after myself, that sort of thing. And then each district health board has a scoring system. You've got to reach over the threshold before they'll even put you on the list. Now, that's how they determine funding. Once you've gotten on the list, you have got to get from the bottom to the top of the list in 4 months or less. And if you don't, I believe that also has an effect on their district health board funding for the following year. So that's how the system works from a government level here in New Zealand. So let's start with that. They're asking they're asking on a pain level, how painful is it? Now, if I was to, the first thing when I think pain, I think of the physiotherapist I met at my pre-op, and her very clear message was this operation is going to be much more hellish than you ever imagine, and you're nowhere in enough pain right now to even consider it. Now, that's a theme that I have met across all of the different medical professionals, is the level of pain. What they seem to think is the more pain you're in beforehand, the better it will be, because then afterwards you'll be in less pain. Now, the reason I think they go for that is because the operation itself, the rehab from the operation, is so freaking painful. Somebody will tell you it's really painful, and you go, Honestly, you cannot even begin to imagine how painful this is until you've been there and you have experienced it. I cannot even describe it to you. I went into this operation eyes wide open. I had watched the surgery and all the variations of the types of surgery on YouTube in graphic detail. And I'd found some doctors that had YouTube channels that were talking about rehab and all that sort of thing. I had my eyes wide open. Even so, this was 100% more hellish than I ever imagined in my first few weeks. Now that's really different from person to person, but I'm just going to stop there and I'll tell you about a bit more about that later. So that's pain. So they think you should be in significant pain before they will consider it, or significant disability. Now I'm sort of in two minds here about this, because on the one hand, yes, I can see the logic. If you're in considerable pain, even if the operation is painful, it will alleviate that. If you're incredibly disabled, then the operation will alleviate that. But there's a flip side to that I can also see that conflicts with that. Now, if you have got a significant effect on your lifestyle and you have the operation, let's cast the pain aside for a second, and the operation restores that, then surely that's good. If you are going through the operation and you had a really good fitness beforehand, surely that's going to speed up the rehab afterwards and make it a lot easier than someone that they've left on the list until they were incredibly disabled. Surely that person will have an advantage over the person that's incredibly disabled because of this knee problem. That's just a bit of a debate out there. You know, there's two ways to look at this thing. So my decision, why did I go ahead with it? Now, it was a quality of life thing, and it really was that beginning and end quality of life. So my knee started giving me issues a number of years ago. Like I said, it took me 4 consultants and a long time, we're talking years, to get to the point where somebody would consider do something about it. The reason for that was my age, because they thought that I was far too young. And I couldn't understand why age had anything to do with this until I had the operation. I seriously would not choose to do this again. And I mean that sincerely. But I'm going to have to, because this knee has got a shelf life that hopefully is shorter than mine. And if I live to about 67, I will have to face a revision of this knee replacement that I've had. And I would not elect to do that if I possibly could. And I can now see why they don't want to do it more than once on someone, because it's horrible. However, my decision, I couldn't work. I had to stop doing a massage in about March 2017 because I was not able to do it anymore, because as a massage therapist you have to stand in a squat and a lunge position quite extensively, and I just couldn't do it. I had to stop. It was starting to affect my ability to work as a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor as well. Luckily for me, I had some really understanding clients that were able to work around that, and some of them would do my demos for me. But it was not something that I could have sustained, and I probably couldn't have carried on working in that field had I not had this knee replacement. Sport. I had to stop running a number of years ago. And little did I know at the time, but I would never go back to running. I will never actually ever be able to run again. I was starting to have trouble even with swimming, because my foot is not on a fixed platform. Because of the kick action in swimming, I couldn't do breaststroke. I haven't swum that stroke anyway, but I got rid of breaststroke quite a number of years ago. I was starting to have trouble with freestyle, that's front crawl, the face down version of it, and I can only assume it's the force of the water against my kneecap as I was kicking upwards, because when I turned over and did the same kick, it didn't have the anywhere near the same amount of pain, but it was starting to affect swimming. It was also starting to affect cycling, because I couldn't go out cycling when it was really windy, because my sideways stabilization on my bike really wasn't what it used to be, and it used to really be painful. So my decision was quality of life related, all of the things that I was no longer able to do, that I still wanted to do, considering I'm only 47, and I wanted to still be able to do these things, because in my opinion, I'm only halfway through my life. Why should it end here? And why should I be old before my time? So that's why I decided it was quality of life and a pain thing. Now, let's go to the pain level. So my pain on a general basis was maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 most of the time, most days, all the time, pre-op. And I gave it a score because I wanted to be able to compare it before and afterwards. So sometimes it was 6 or 7, sometimes we got as low as 6, but it probably never got any lower than that. And sometimes it was up near 8 or 9. I used to be on oxycodone until it started giving me horrid side effects. That's how much pain I was in. Oxycodone, if you not heard of it, is stronger than morphine. And its withdrawal symptoms when you stop taking it are likened to heroin. That's how strong that drug is. Now, I actually elected to stop taking it in July this year because of the side effect, the horrid side effects. I changed my diet to anti-inflammatory and I started taking turmeric high strength capsules that you can get over the counter, and that managed it mostly. So I could possibly say, oh, you know, I regret doing this operation because I was managing the pain quite effectively. Actually, what I was doing was adapting my life to make it work. So I'd stopped tramping. I used to go on a lot of long distance hikes. There's no way I could have done it. I stopped cycling because I couldn't do it anymore. I stopped swimming because I couldn't do it anymore. I stopped running because I couldn't do it anymore. So the only thing I was left to do was walking, and I could do that when the knee was behaving. I would walk. That's not ideal. That's not a quality of life. Then I started to struggle to walk around the shops, and I had to get a stick. And for me, that was declaring I was ancient because I had to go to Shop Mobility and buy a walking stick. No. So you can put yourself rosy tinted glasses on this thing, or you can look at the thing in reality. I had changed so much of my life to adapt to the fact that I was coping with this pain, because I'm not somebody that is going to sit and moan all the time. So I was covering it up quite effectively. In fact, probably too effectively, and it probably flummoxed a lot of the medical professionals and made them think I was not in as much pain as I actually was. But pain is definitely the reason why I did it. Even though, having said that, post-op, the pain level, holy cow. Now, I would put it in a firm old 10 out of 10 for about 2 weeks. Now, just have a think about that. That is horrific to have to cope with. Now, I've got an added disadvantage in the fact that I cannot take any anti-inflammatory meds and I cannot take any opiate meds. So I actually had nothing other than paracetamol from day 3. I elected to stop taking everything because they were making me too sick. So that made my rehab post-op much more horrifically painful than most people. If you are someone who can take morphine or tramadol or something like that, you may just sail through. My dad has had a partial knee replacement and he said it was sweet as, no problem. He had no issues whatsoever and he'd go back and do it in a heartbeat. But because I am not able to get the pain under control, mine was not like that at all. It was quite horrific, and it was not until about the middle of week 3 post-op before I could even say that it was starting to abate a little. So that's something to bear in mind if you're considering this operation, the level of pain you're in, the level of pain you can tolerate, the sort of meds you can have, and what it's going to be like post-op. Now, when people say, oh, you'll be in pain for a while, you know, a while is usually a week or 2 or a couple of days. The scale of rehab for this op is on a different level entirely. So 6 weeks post-op, which is what I am right now, is considered early on in this journey. 6 weeks of not being able to go anywhere, do anything, not being able to swim, not being able to drive, and having to rely on people and feeling pretty miserable and sitting in the house and can't work. 6 weeks of that feels like 600 years when you're in it. So that's another thing you need to bear in mind too, is the speed of the rehab. My husband keeps reminding me that that is actually related to life. So this is 3 months before the implant knits to the bone. In those 3 months, I've got to not twist in any direction or I could dislodge it. It takes a further 4 to 6 to be able to get full function back in it and to be back to fully operational like you were beforehand, 1 year. So that's quite a long time, but he reminds me, in the grand scheme of life, that's only a short time, because I'm hoping that I'll live longer than a year. So yes, so that's my thoughts on the whole thing. So the things that, if we got back to quality of life, which was the reason I went and did this in the first place, I was not able to sit on a chair normally like I am now. I was not able to squat, lunge, I wasn't able to do spin classes anymore, I could not run, I couldn't tramp, and I was struggling to walk, and I was actually going to have to give up work. All for somebody who's 47, that's not good. Now, so far, I have got no pain unless I'm using it and flexing it and trying to rehab it. I don't have pain. That's a step in the right direction for me, because I used to have pain all the time. I can sit on a chair like a normal person for a reasonable amount of time. I couldn't do that before. I can work back at massage in about 6 months. That'll be a year since I stopped. I was actually wondering whether I'd ever be able to get back to it. But there's still a lot of things that I can't do. Sorry, excuse me. I still can't walk very well. I still can't cycle because I can't get my leg to go round in a flipping circle. I can't bend it past 95 degrees at the moment, which I'm still working on. I still can't drive, although I'm hoping they'll let me in the next week. So if you're asking me right now, at this very precise moment in time, was it worth it? It's a difficult question to answer, because I can see some things that are better than they used to be at the moment, but I can also see some things that are not as good as they used to be at the moment. So we are early on in this little old road, and was it worth it? I'm not going to be able to answer that completely. I'm going to have to say the jury is out on that, but the early signs are good. So I hope that that really long-winded, detailed, complex answer has helped those people that are wondering about this whole thing. And like I say, if you've got any questions, do ask, and I will answer them as honestly as I can. And if you've got a question you'd like to put to me that you want me to answer at some point in the future, then I also am happy to do that, because I wanted to find some people online that had built up some resources that could tell me what to expect for rehab, and I could only find medical professionals and little old leaflets made by physiotherapists and bundles of people that had never had it. So I'm hoping that the resources that I build up will help people that are facing this operation, that have gone through it, they're about to, on the family and friends of those people. I've also been asked about the prehab exercises, which I will get back to, and I've been asked about the flexion exercises that I'm currently doing, which I will also add in. However, I'm going to end it there. So the very long-winded answer to the very short question, was it worth it? Ask me again in March 2019 and I will tell you what I think then. But at the moment, the early signs are good.